Most people think low energy has a simple fix: more sleep, more caffeine, more discipline. But fatigue is not primarily a fuel problem. It's a regulation problem. Your brain applies the brake early based on what it predicts your reserve can handle, and certain medications can shift that prediction, so the system underestimates what you're capable of. When this happens, recovery slows. Progress plateaus. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 5 specific ways that happens and how to recognize it in your own system. This will change the way you think about your energy. When I think about the body's potential, I think in terms of capacity, energy, and fatigue. Think of capacity like your car engine ceiling, the maximum output it can produce regardless of how hard you press the pedal. Your body's capacity includes cardiovascular buffering, mitochondrial output, hormonal stability, and the drag imposed by chronic inflammation. It's your ceiling. You can want more, push harder, will yourself forward, and still not exceed a capacity that's been quietly reduced. Medications can do that. They can lower the ceiling without anyone noticing it. Energy is the fuel delivery system operating in real time. Oxygen reaching working muscle, glucose available for demand, blood redistributed to where the effort is happening. Your sympathetic nervous system manages this the way your car balances power delivery and traction. Actively, automatically, moment to moment. It fluctuates throughout the day. It responds to what you ask of it. And fatigue is neither of those. Fatigue is your onboard computer making a prediction. The same way a smart car limits top speed based on tire wear or engine temperature, your brain estimates the cost of what's ahead against what it believes your current reserve can handle, and it throttles output before you hit the wall. This is protective, but it's predictive, and predictions can be wrong. We see this after stroke and in post-ICU patients fighting to rebuild their lives. We also see it outside of rehabilitation, in athletes and other driven, resilient people who hit unexplained plateaus or persistent mental fog. So what is this onboard computer exactly? The structure coordinating much of this is the hypothalamus. Most people think of it as a hormone gland. It's much more than that. It's an integrative command hub governing hormone signaling, temperature, fluid balance, sleep architecture, and stress calibration. It also coordinates autonomic output in real time. Think of sympathetic activation as your car shifting into sport mode, increased output, resources redirected toward performance. Parasympathetic tone is eco mode, restoration, conservation, recovery. The hypothalamus and autonomic system continuously monitor internal signals and make adjustments before you consciously register them. So, what happens if the fatigue signal fires too early? Not because you're deconditioned, but because incoming signals have shifted or the regulatory programming has been altered. Some medications can do exactly that. That's not your willpower failing you. Let's look at each mechanism. We start at the top with the brain's arousal system. Running on dopamine and norepinephrine, this system generates the cortical drive that allows you to initiate tasks, sustain attention, and take action rather than do nothing. Think of it as the car's ignition and acceleration response. Central nervous system depressants, opioids, benzodiazepines, sedative sleep agents, cannabis, first-generation antihistamines dial down the output of this system directly. The part that surprises most people is what this does to sleep. The assumption is that more sedation equals more rest. It doesn't. Restorative sleep requires cycling through deep, slow-wave sleep and REM, the stages where the brain's glymphatic system, its overnight cleaning crew, clears metabolic waste and carries out cellular repair. Many of these medications reduce deep, slow-wave sleep and can alter REM. This means you can get more sleep, but without the same restoration. The result is a slow, heavy start to every day. It's harder to concentrate or stay motivated. When this accumulates over weeks and months, the fatigue becomes normalized. It becomes who the person is. The most useful first move: track your energy against your medication timing. Patterns emerge. You don't adjust medications on your own. You bring those patterns to your prescribing physician to go over. Then there's the autonomic system. That's your car's sport mode versus eco mode. When you stand up, begin walking, or take on a demanding task, your sympathetic nervous system is supposed to engage. Your heart rate rises, cardiac output climbs, blood moves toward working muscles. You don't have to think about it. It's the equivalent of adaptive cruise control, sensing a hill and adjusting power delivery before you even feel the grade change. The part of the brain responsible for this is the insular cortex. It functions as a real-time comparator, continuously reading the gap between what your tissues are demanding and what the cardiovascular system is actually delivering. Medications like beta blockers limit your heart rate. When your heart can't accelerate to meet muscular demand, the insular cortex detects that mismatch and triggers a fatigue signal. Patients describe this as exercise intolerance that doesn't match how fit they feel. Fatigue sets in quicker, effort that seems enormous at moderate loads, and recovery seems to take longer than it should. The objective tool for helping figure out medication-induced fatigue versus deconditioning is a cardiopulmonary exercise test when your clinician thinks it's appropriate. The source of fuel for the cells is ATP, generated by mitochondria through a cascade of enzymatic reactions. Certain medications interfere with that chain. Statins are the most documented. They indirectly reduce coenzyme Q10, a critical cofactor in the mitochondrial electron transport chain. The result is the engine's efficiency drops. What's important to understand is that standard labs often don't fully explain this. A newer mechanism is that some statins can bind a key muscle calcium release channel, the ryanodine receptor, and create a calcium leak that may weaken muscle. This doesn't mean statins should be stopped. For many patients, they are protective. It means if unexplained muscle fatigue appears, it deserves a structured conversation. Metformin is more nuanced. It mildly inhibits mitochondrial complex I, lowering peak output capacity. For most patients managing metabolic disease, the clinical benefits far outweigh this effect. But for someone who is physically active and dependent on high mitochondrial throughput, rebuilding capacity after illness, pushing performance limits, it can produce a real and subtle reduction in energy ceiling that no standard test will show. Chronic glucocorticoids like prednisone and dexamethasone work differently. They alter mitochondrial gene expression, promote oxidative stress, and drive glucose volatility. The post-meal energy crashes many patients on long-term steroids experience aren't random. They reflect glucose volatility that quietly erodes reserve. Hormones set your baseline capacity over weeks and months, and medications can shift that baseline in ways that develop so gradually they become the new normal and accepted. Recovery takes a little longer. Stress tolerance shrinks a little. Activities that used to feel manageable start feeling like effort. And because the change is gradual, it gets attributed to aging, to the underlying condition, to life, rather than to the drug. Chronic corticosteroids suppress the body's own cortisol production through HPA axis feedback. They can alter peripheral thyroid hormone conversion and, in men, reduce testosterone through gonadotropin inhibition. Long-term opioid use suppresses hypothalamic GnRH release, which lowers LH and FSH, which in turn reduces testosterone and estrogen in both men and women. The clinical result is fatigue, reduced drive, mood changes, cognitive dulling, and it's almost always attributed to the pain condition itself, instead of the medication managing it. Medications that affect your thyroid hormone, like lithium and amiodarone, can produce subclinical hypothyroid states where TSH can look normal while symptoms persist, but functional thyroid availability is reduced, and the fatigue that follows is real, measurable, and responsive to treatment when it gets identified. None of these mechanisms operates in isolation. They stack. Think about someone taking an antihistamine like Benadryl to sleep, a bladder medication like oxybutynin during the day, and an antidepressant like amitriptyline at night. Each prescription came from a different provider for a legitimate reason, but each one individually carries a mild anticholinergic effect, blocking acetylcholine receptors to some degree. Together, they can produce confusion, brain fog, dry mouth, and fatigue. None of this suggests those prescriptions were wrong, only that stacking effects are often invisible until someone steps back and looks at the full list. Now add a beta blocker and a statin to that picture. The cortical drive is suppressed, autonomic allocation is blunted, cellular energy production is reduced, the hormonal baseline has shifted. The effects don't add, they compound. Let me be direct about what this video is and isn't. It is not an argument against medication. Several of these medications are prescribed for serious reasons, and for many patients, the benefits are real and significant. There are 3 key points I want you to take from this video. First, review your medication timing. Many CNS active drugs produce peak sedative effect at a predictable window, and whether that window overlaps with your peak demand hours is sometimes adjustable. Second, look at the full stack of medications, supplements, and vitamins. Talk to your physician or pharmacist specifically about your cumulative sedative load and anticholinergic burden. Someone needs to look at the whole list as a system, not as individual prescriptions. Medication changes should always be supervised. The power here is in recognizing patterns, not abruptly removing treatment. Third, distinguish fatigue from deconditioning. They produce similar symptoms and require opposite interventions. If you've been consistently active for 6 to 8 weeks and a given effort still feels the same or harder, the ceiling may be pharmacological rather than physical. What I hope stays with you is that your body has more potential. Fatigue is a prediction, and predictions can be wrong. They can slow down your recovery or plateauing your progress. You have more influence over this system than most people are told. Deliberate breathing directly modulates autonomic tone through the vagus nerve. Physical load, done correctly and with the constraints of your system respected, builds mitochondrial reserve rather than depleting it. Thank you for joining me. I'm Dr. Moving Better. Remember this: energy is managed. If it's managed, it can be recalibrated. Build reserve before you add load. If this was useful, leave a comment below and let me know what you want to see next. Move smart. Move with intent. I'll see you in the next episode.